Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us on the Slice of Healthcare podcast. This one's co-hosted by myself, Jared Taylor, and my co-host.
Leila Yari.
We're joined by a very special guest today, Jessica Karr, a general partner at Coyote Ventures.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being a guest. Yeah, let's kick things off. Tell us about your background, and then we have a lot of adorable.
I have my dog Eddie here, so I know this is a podcast and you won't be able to see, but maybe we can.
No, you will.
Okay, there
Yeah.
we go. So he's here. Okay, so you can see Eddie. Great. So my background, I was formerly a biochemist. Thought that I was going to be a doctor, but ended up working in research instead. So I did a master's in biochem and had the opportunity to finish on the PhD, but I actually left grad school because I wanted to work on something that was a little more tangible that I could see instead of writing papers. And so I was really fortunate. I got a job at Impossible Foods when it was less than a year old. So I was the 12th employee, and I worked on the R&D for Impossible as well as the product development. So it was part of the initial formulation when it launched. And that was around 2016. And at that point, I had been there for 4 years. So I left at that point to do an MBA and started consulting with very early stage startups, and did that for 2 years, worked with about 12 companies, a lot of them very much idea stage, and really enjoyed building a portfolio. But I also saw that what they really needed was funding, and I wanted to work on the investing side. And so I joined Emerging Fund in 2020. That was a kind of generalist impact thesis with a celebrity as a GP, and it was good to get experience more on lots of diligence of companies from that perspective. I would say the generalist thesis was a little difficult because I was one day looking at, in one day, even looking at a municipal bond startup, and then looking at a healthcare startup, and then looking at food tech. And so I really wanted to dive deep into one area, which is healthcare. And while I was there, I started to see women's health deal flow. And I think 2020 allowed for a surge in women's health companies. And, as a lot of women in women's health had also a personal healthcare experience that helped me realize from a personal standpoint how overlooked the area has been. And so I was also really passionate about making change in that area. So I launched Coyote in 2021.
That's amazing. And that's an incredible background. We'd love to hear a little bit more about the thesis of the fund, if you can jump into that.
So we're looking at women's health and wellness, and we define it sort of the traditional definition is conditions that solely affect women. So that is, menstruation, menopause. I think that a lot of people think of us when they see something that affects all women. But the other parts of the thesis is also things that affect women differently and disproportionately. And so we're really leaning into digital health thesis now. About 6 out of 10 of our companies are digital health, and that's basically all we're looking at this point in time. And so we're also, when we're looking at them, if they basically have a majority women user base, that counts as our thesis. And the other part of that is looking at the diversity of the founding and leadership team. And so we have seen some women's health companies that lack diversity of women on the team, and we pass on those as well. And so a lot of that is is it benefiting women's lives? Is it designed with women in mind? Does it have majority women user base? And so we're looking at sort of these other core pillars of health where they affect men and women differently, but just designing with all of that I just mentioned. So some things like sleep health, mental health, lots of areas that still, intersect with other areas of women's lives as well. So it really becomes a little more encompassing as a thesis when you understand all of that.
Would love for you to talk about some of the portfolio companies that you've invested in. Jessica, I know we do actually a fair amount of stuff with a lot of your portfolio companies, Hera Biotech, it always has like a monthly thought leadership post with us. Um, would love to kind of hear about how, there's lots of funds out there, but it seems like the relationships and the extras that the funds do beyond just investing are what really solidify these relationships moving forward. So I would really be interested if you could tell us more about, how are your relationships with your portfolio companies? How do you continue to support them beyond the check?
Definitely. Yeah. Here at Biotech is an amazing company. So I'm glad that you're able to work with them some. And there's a lot that putting out there on the education of like what is endometriosis, like it affects 1 in 10 women or more. And there's still not a lot of awareness or research dollars for it. So that's a great example. I would say like one value add that we have is we have a group of advisors. And so some of that is like matching them with the portfolio company needs. So some of that is looking at more like either advisor or talent hiring. And I would say like I'm on a text basis with a lot of the founders, and they can definitely reach out anytime with any like even questions on like how do I deal with this team member, this problem. I don't want to give any specific examples, but there is some of that as well. And I like to connect them with each other. So we're not investing in anything that will become competitors. A lot of them is complementary. So like here at Biotech, they'll launch their endodiagnostic and fertility clinics. And then Sunfish, which I believe Angela might be a guest on this podcast soon, their fertility financing options. So they're partnering with fertility clinics as well. So that's a natural way that they could go in and make some of the introductions together. And like, actually, I introduced here at Biotech to their first fertility clinic client. So a lot of it has to do with, like sales and team support, some of it's emotional support and fundraising support, like building the list of co-investors and sending deals over when there's something that we're committed to that has room in the round, as well as follow-on funding. So making sure that they stay well capitalized, especially like later rounds.
I've heard great things from your portfolio companies about the relationship. So I just wanted to ask though to hear your side of things, which is great. And I hope most of them get to meet your dog, because just that starts the relationship with a smile on their
They
face,
pretty
right?
much all have. Yeah.
Jess, I'd love to know a little bit more about the investors and the LPs that are in the fund, if you can share with us. I know B of A is one of
Yeah.
them.
Um, we do have Bank of America as an LP, so really excited that we're working with them, and they've been really great and helpful. We also have a few family offices. Some of them are focused on women's health, like the Case for Her. Another one focused more on general impact. So it's called Triple Family Office out of Australia. And we have a lot of individuals who are, I would say most of them are usually like health tech executives. So we have Susan Solinsky, who's working with a mental health startup. We have also some professionals that are GPs and other funds, as well as wealth managers. So a pretty diverse group, but they're really great and engaged. So very happy to work with them.
And there's just one fund right now? Is there a fund two?
We're on Fund One.
Any plans for fund two, or we're?
Yeah, but Fund One is still has a lot of
Has a
things
while
left
to
to
go.
do.
Just want to ask about the future of Coyote. That's all.
Yeah, there will be future funds, hopefully future partners and bigger teams. So I have a great team of part-time people. So I have 7 venture partners and 3 on the investment committee. And so they're really helpful for how many deals we can really look at once, and also helping with some special projects. Like we're doing the fireside chats that you guys saw. So we can definitely plan one together, and we're managing like a database. So there's a lot of, in addition to doing the deals and the diligence, there's, lots of like side projects always going on too.
That's amazing. I know one of the questions that you brought up was sort of what is the successful anatomy of a digital health platform? And I'd love to sort of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this is something I've been thinking about is, with the start of COVID and the enablement of telemedicine, there's definitely a spike in companies doing telemedicine for XYZ. But what I'm seeing now is the need for beyond telemedicine. Like that may or may not be a feature. So some of the other features are like collecting data and generating insights that feed back like machine learning into more data and insights. And so I think some of it may or may not include telemedicine, but having that data. So one example, another company we invested in, Malama Health, they have an app that helps women when they're diagnosed with diabetes during pregnancy. And the app it works with the healthcare provider, so it's not a D2C app. That anyone can download it, but basically the provider is recommending the app when people are diagnosed. And so they have basically like the enablement of data where people are uploading their blood glucose data, as well as they need to track their diet and exercise so it can integrate with any wearables for the exercise part. And with the food part, they have an API where you take a picture of your food and it'll put out, the caloric information. And so this really helps, tracking all these things with a more digitized platform. It all streamlines into Epic portal so the healthcare providers can see. And I think, having this condition can be a little frustrating to troubleshoot if you're out of range and not sure what's going on. So that's an example, like they could enable telemedicine at some point. But really, what I think of as successful is there's all these touch points between the doctor's visits, which, like, for all of us, usually isn't enough if there is a health concern. And kind of the end. So that's the features. On the monetizing part, a lot of these successful ones are B2B to C. So they're either fee for service, so they can build a payer with a current reimbursement code. Ultimate goal being to develop direct contracts as a vendor with the payers. And the other route for that, aside from fee for service, is also potentially being an employee benefit. So, a lot of companies could start D2C with that, but really a lot of them can gain a lot more traction and de-risk by being B2B to C. And then pretty much the ultimate from all of that is measuring health outcomes. And so from the get-go, like really showing. So Malama Health was aiming to reduce preterm births, but they have a lot of other like measurements they can make, but that's like sort of an ultimate one. But it's like gestational diabetes is also associated with cardiovascular risk, like risk for long-term diabetes. And then also they'll reduce like C-sections. So they actually, when we first invested in the pre-seed, they had this beautiful dashboard of like, here's the health outcomes we're planning to measure. And then now they've, more than 9 months later, have had their first cohorts of babies being born. And they've shown a 50% reduction in preterm births. And so I would say, like, even if the company hasn't fully launched, like really being clear about what they're measuring and also like why the payers will ultimately cover this, which, as these C-sections and preterm births will essentially be a huge cost savings. But also like with us caring about like maternal health outcomes in the US, there's a huge incentive to do what we can on a lot of these pregnancy risks. So that's all an example of showing like the digital health beyond the telemedicine piece of it.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, sharing information about your portfolio companies, sharing information about your investors, and then really what the fund sets out to do. Obviously, we're already fans, so this just helps reassure why we're fans. And hearing more from you on the future of women's health and why you're investing in these companies is, I think I speak for Leila and myself, that we love what you're doing. We're excited to continue staying in touch with you and hear what you're doing. We'll have to get you on a panel at some point. We'll maybe host one of these fireside chats with you, which would be fun. And now we already have the relationships to have that deeper rapport when we talk more about what you're doing.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for featuring me. And I'm a big fan of you guys as well. And Leila and I go way back. So,
Yeah, definitely. Jess, thanks so much for coming on. It's been so much fun.
Thank you.